Good evening. I call this budget work session for April 24, 2023 to order. I would like to acknowledge, by the way, I am Mayor Kurt Wilson, and I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues and council members present. Councilmember Sarah Beeson, Councilmember Christine Hall, Councilmember Lee Hills, Councilmember Michael Palermo, Councilmember Dr. Peter Vanstrom, and Councilmember Will Morthland, who will be with us in just a moment. Also in attendance is our City Administrator, Mr. Randy Knighton, City Attorney David Davidson, and our City Clerk, Marlene Press. Today's topic is our partner organization presentations, and we're very excited to have 5 presentations from our partner organizations, and thanks so much for everybody showing up to be a part of the process tonight. We have switched the order if you have a formal agenda in front of you. I believe we're going to start with the first presentation from Roswell, Inc., and I'm going to turn it over to Lynn. So welcome, Lynn.
Good evening. So we will do 10 minutes of presentation. At 5 minutes, Karen will hold up a yellow sign, and then at the conclusion, we'll hold up a stop, and then it will be time for question and answers from Mayor and Council. And then we will move on to the next group. So first we have Roswell, Inc., and I will turn it over to Steve Job.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I would like to introduce the chairman of our board, Mr. John Paul Kroom, with the CEO of Wellstar North Fulton. John?
All right, and as we get started, I'm going to do this really quickly. I just want to thank our board members who serve as board members for both Roswell, Inc. and Visit Roswell. If you guys, I'm not going to go through the whole list, and I'll only do it once. If you guys don't mind standing real quick, I appreciate you guys taking the time and all that you guys do for the city. So we'll get started with the first slide. And thank you again, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to present again this year. We are Roswell, Inc. We are an accredited economic development organization, one of only 3 in the state of Georgia. We went through that process several years ago, rather rigorous process, and are happy to have that next to the name. We're a 501c6 not-for-profit organization. We have been in partnership with the city since 2012. Non-membership, it's a non-membership based organization. We serve all 5,000 Roswell licensed businesses regardless of their participation. Our mission is to work to build a strong, diverse, and sustainable business community, retaining our existing businesses through expert counsel and innovative programming, growing established businesses by providing resources and support, and attracting new businesses by marketing Roswell's assets and cultivating business opportunities.
So in 2024, our focus will continue to be to work on collaborative efforts with the City Council, with the Mayor, to create opportunities for business to grow in the city of Roswell, and working with the existing businesses to help them grow and sustain their business relationships here in the city of Roswell. Our ask for 2024 is $315,000. That would be 38% of our budget. We're projected for 62% private funding through the businesses of the city of Roswell, with a total of $814,000. There are 2 asks. One that was asked of us with a leadership trip included, and you'll see that in this process. Councilman Palermo had discussed that earlier in the year, and one without. So you'll see it without the budget, without the leadership trip. It's ask of $279,000. City request and the breakdown, as you can see, $210,000. Again, 38% of our total budget comes from the city, from the rental car tax, which is it's unique in that it is a pass-through tax collected from visitors through the collision centers and the car dealers, and it's collected by all cities. And our revenue projections by the city and our great staff in the finance department is over $370,000 in 2023. Our projected private income runs up to right at $500,000, $499,000, and that's where we That's 62% of our budget as it currently stands. Our requests over the years, you can see that in FY20, we had requested, again, these are requested numbers, was 506. We dropped down in COVID to, we requested 487, received 277. In FY22, we received 277.5, and again, we've sustained at 277.5. Last year, we asked for 294. We received 277.5, and this year, with the trip, that would be a 315 ask. Our operations and staffing, tell you a little bit about that. We've talked about what that request is and what the things that we do within. We have staff of 3. We do all this with 3 individuals. Ashley Allen, our Director of Operations, who's here, and Morgan Pierce, our Business Specialist. Our memberships include International IEDC, our Council on Quality Growth, the North Fulton Chamber, GED, we're very active in that, and also the Georgia Chamber. Economic and business development, very, very key to what we do. The site visits, here's some of the 150 plus businesses we supported in 2023, and that's through different ways that we connected with these businesses to help them grow or sustain within the city of Roswell. Our conferences and events, IEDC, John Paul mentioned the fact of the importance of IEDC and the accreditation. Again, the accreditation is a very stringent process that we go through, and we continue to be reaccredited, and will be reaccredited next year. Industry support, that's where we work and continue to work with our concierge, where we try to work with the businesses to make sure that they are welcomed, loved, and continue to be loved after they're here in the city of Roswell. Our retail analysis, the 9 centers that we study monthly, so that we see the traffic and the traffic control and where that looks like, what the sales are, and where the generating industry leaders are in our city. Our regional state partners that we work with on a regular basis, SCORE, SBDC, Select Fulton, of course our friends at Visit Roswell next door. And then our industry events, our Summer Sippin', which will kick off in June, our restaurant weeks that support one of our larger industries, our EV Readiness Summit, and our Real Estate Summit that we have each and every year. Communications and marketing are a key portion of what we try to do. We have over 7,400 followers on our newsletter and over 3,300 followers on Facebook. Continue to grow that. In 2023, we've added 2 new videos that are about Roswell and why choose Roswell. Thanks to Grind Time and his production outfit, we did a great job, and they did a great job in actually putting that whole thing together. Again, our request for 2023 or 2024, 315 if we do the leadership trip. If we don't, it's 279 is what we're asking for. Questions?
I think I failed to mention, obviously, your timing is great, Steve, and all partner organizations, because this week Randy and I are working on the first draft of the budget to submit to council, so this is going to be budget week, so your timing is absolutely perfect, Steve. Do any council members have any questions or comments for Steve or for John Paul? Councilmember Hills.
I'm getting aggressive.
Push the button.
Thank you, Mayor. Could you give a quick, because I know we're short on time, overview of like the leadership trip with that in? Could you give just an overview?
Sure, and council, I think the only person that actually has attended the leadership trips were Councilman Palermo, and those trips are very unique. It's a structured trip to a sister city of choice that is done with mayor and council, with staff, all the department heads, selected leaders from our board, again, working together for a 3-day trip to a selected city to see best practices on how they do everything from tourism to economic development to parks and rec, historic asset management. We've actually had 3 trips, Greenville, Asheville, and Franklin, North Carolina. Again, to study the local arenas. Michael was on that trip to Franklin and gave us lots of kudos for that trip. And that trip was very helpful because it showed how things are done in different districts. Again, out of state, only because those are great examples of how you grow. So that's just a little bit of what it was. Yes,
Councilmember Hall.
yes.
Thank you. I just had a clarification.
Sure.
In the request since fiscal year 20, slide 1A, you had indicated that you had requested 506, but the actual funding was 560. So I'm guessing maybe that's a typo.
Maybe. We'll check that.
And then,
What about FY '20?
20.
yes,
Yeah.
the first bar up there.
Yes, ma'am.
So we actually,
We'll, if that's correct.
Funded
we'll-
560.
we'll make sure.
I'm actually thinking.
I think it
I wonder
was.
if that was the year where 506 was originally requested, and then there was an increase later on in the year. I wonder if there was one year where there was kind of.
I think that was pre-20. I think that was like,
Or was that pre-20?
yeah, I think 2019, 18 or 19.
Might have been 19.
Yeah, 19. That sounds right.
okay.
We'll double check that.
And again, just to clarify, these were the requested amounts,
Yes, not the
actual-
funded, yes,
Okay.
correct.
Because I think you were funded pretty much what you asked for previously, except for fiscal year '21. Your request was 487, and you were funded 290.
Correct. And the purpose of this slide is to show the movement from city funds to the private sector, to show where our funding is coming from.
So 560 would actually prove your point even more
Right.
in the direction you want to show it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Any thoughts, comments, or questions from council? Councilmember Hall?
Now I'm having the issues with it. So we had talked about, I think you were going to implement some metrics and share metrics with us. And we had talked about this a couple of years ago or over the years since I've been on council. What kind of metrics?
So we would highly encourage some metrics that we both could share. We would encourage the IEDC to come in and monitor and help us determine what those metrics need to be. As a board, I think John Paul can address that. It's very important for us. We're kept under several metrics, Andy and I both, and how we grow the organization. Part of the metrics is growing outside of the city funding, so that the city doesn't continue to have to be funding on that, and helping grow the business climate. So whether that's growing the businesses throughout the automobile industry, so that the rental car tax, as we brought that to the table for a new revenue source for the city, I think that's very important. And we would welcome the opportunity to sit down and jointly, and I know that Michael has talked about this for 7 years, and we would jointly love to sit down and have that conversation of what those metrics should be and what sister cities do for metrics on that. Absolutely.
Let me ask you a question, Steve, on that, because this is obviously something that I get asked about from just normal, everyday residents. And the terminology I would use kind of to Christine's question is, by the way, congratulations. I know that during the State of the City, you announced there were 560 new businesses brought to the city of Roswell last year. Congratulations on that. And it's fantastic. And I think that's a perfect example where we really need an attribution model. That's what I would call it, right? Very simple terminology. And in that, you would ask some very simple questions. Like, of those 560 businesses, how many employees did we bring with those 560 businesses? That's like a very simple question, valuable. How much office space, commercial space did we lease? How much office space, commercial space did we sell? What kind of businesses, what segments did they come from? Were they intended segments? In other words, were these segments that we say these fit into our long-term economic strategy? Or were they happening as a consequence maybe that we didn't want? Do we know where the employees live? How many of those employees are in Roswell? What kind of salary is attributable to those 560 new businesses? That's just kind of would be a starting point for an attribution model, so that when we're talking to a normal resident, whether they're have a grand understanding of our economic strategy or not, that we can answer those in very succinct terms. And I think those are things that, to me, would be what success would look like. And I think I'd kind of ask that question of us. In your mind, kind of what does success look like?
What does city success look
No,
like?
what does success look like for Roswell Inc.?
Oh, success, to me, success is helping grow the businesses, the existing businesses, helping welcome the new businesses and helping bring them in, and helping set a matrix that is attainable, right? Because again, we're creating an environment, right? Not only Roswell Inc., but more importantly, the city of Roswell and the leadership. And that environment that you're creating is a business-friendly environment that invites these businesses in. And some of them, as Mary, as you would say, would just happen, right? But some of them have been coddled. Some have been, escorted through the process to become part of the city, or helped with a mortgage, or with a broker, right? Working with a broker to say, hey, this is why you need to come to Roswell. And that would be something that would be a measurable of, like you said, how much office did we help lease in 2024? How much office space, and what were those employee average salaries? What do those look like? So that we can have an agreeable metrics that makes sense.
In your mind, kind of like who's kind of responsible for economic strategy at this juncture?
Oh, mayor and council.
And what is the economic strategy?
It's a great question. I think we're working on that as we speak. And that's to make the city an even better. Because for us, as we represent, this board represents the businesses in the city of Roswell. We're looking for guidance on that. And whatever that guidance is, we're going to help make that successful.
So let me ask you, because I think that's really interesting. I think that's a really good point on your part. So what kind of companies are we targeting today?
Targeting mostly the companies that we're targeting are IT companies or medical companies, because medical is one of our leading industries, if not the top. So those two, as you know, go back and forth between number one and number two. And so because of the EV boom in our car dealers, we've seen nothing but positive feedback on the EV and where that direction goes.
Yeah, I love the fact that you brought up EV. So are we talking about EV or future fuels?
EV.
We're talking about EV, so are we talking about being a tech hub, a parts hub, a manufacturing hub? How would you define
I think that's going to be determined by mayor and council, and what direction we go. And you're gonna lead that charge.
So so I'm the new economic development director. I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure if I'm the new economic development director, it's a new title for me. I didn't know this. So what do you need from the city, Steve? Because obviously, and I don't like being flippant about spending other people's money, because that's obviously what we're talking about. But it's a simple ask. You're not asking for a lot of money. So kind of help me understand what I'm getting behind as the mayor and asking my colleagues to get behind.
Jump on you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, to answer that question, I think, the board and the Roswell Inc. Piece of this is interested in, making sure that, as we're growing our own businesses, as our own business affiliates are part of this, or we, to make sure that we have that connection with the city, which I think we've established very well in the past, couple of years. I think that we want, from a business standpoint, business leaders want to work, closer with mayor and council to make sure that, our own business interests, as we're growing, what we're doing. We know what other businesses are doing. We have ideas about other business partners that could potentially come in, but we also are very interested in the overall growth of the city, because, ultimately, I mean, most of these people sitting over here that are on our board have very keen interest in the right growth for the city, and the right growth only benefits all of us.
What else do you need, Steve and John Paul? What else do you need from the city?
I think one of the things that has been key and integral this year is your appointment of Peter Bandstrom as a liaison, because the more we can engage you and get you involved in what we've done over the last 12 years, I think it would be helpful to help grow these businesses. So I think that's an important part, and I think that's one of the things John Paul's saying.
Councilmember Bandstrom.
Yeah, I think what might be helpful too is to review real quickly. If you look on Roswell Inc.'s website, they have a pretty succinct, nice vision with key industries that they're targeting, from hospitality, professional services, to technology, to healthcare. I think that's more definition than we've given in the year and a half to where we want to head as a council and a mayor. And I don't appreciate chastising them too deeply on that until we've established our vision, because we are in the middle of changing that vision, as I understand. And to sit here and ask the board to understand, or ask John Paul or Roswell Inc. to understand the vision of Roswell at this point, or to try and address the vision and give it back to you, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but the vision is not clear at this point in time. So I'd like to table that discussion, and that shouldn't even be a part of what we're asking these people, because it hasn't been clear what we're asking of them.
That's
And I would
really interesting,
challenge-
Councilmember
I would
Esther.
challenge the board, they can't speak publicly unless allowed, or would challenge either of these two gentlemen to clarify what they feel that vision has been presented to them.
That's really interesting, Councilmember Venstrom, that you felt that somehow Roswell Inc. was being attacked. I'm curious of why you felt that way.
I'm just asking you to table the conversation about the vision of the Roswell mayor and council, because economically that vision has not been clarified.
Well, obviously, you're the economic liaison, so you're part of the integral part of this, correct?
Yes, I am, and I'm saying we're not quite there yet, and I don't think it's fair to ask that of a private-public partnership entity that doesn't yet understand our clear vision, because it hasn't been dictated.
I think that's a very good point, Councilmember Vanstrom, why it might be important not to be too clear about what specific things you might be targeting without a clear strategy. And so it might be careful for our partner to perhaps be in check on pursuing some particular industries when that strategy has not been formulated. So that's part of my caution, certainly not chastisement. If it's received that way, please forgive me. Wouldn't do that. It's meant as a cautionary tale that until a clear economic strategy is given from the city, that perhaps we be careful on what we pursue. EV is a perfect example. My question is, are you going to be a parts hub, right? Are you going to be a manufacturing hub, right? There's a lot of different parts of that equation. Are you going to be in hydrogen? Are you pursuing the entire fuel piece? We haven't answered those questions.
And
We
I
haven't-
welcome, as soon as we have a decision on those, then metrics can be developed for Roswell Inc., and we can decide on what we are asking of them to.
Well, Peter, I do
from the
think
city.
it's valuable today for all of us. Number one, let me say this, so it's very, very clear. I'm a huge supporter of Steve Stroud's, and will continue to be. And I think Steve Stroud has a very key role in the city as an economic part integrally in our city, and will continue to. And let me be very clear about that. But I also want us to have clarity that all organizations in the city that are working with the city, whether they're a partner organization and they're receiving money, right, should be on the same page strategically. I don't think that's a big ask. And that make sure that there's not disparate activity. And so, and one of the things is like, for example, we waste time and energy as a city historically. Stephen, you and I have talked about this a lot, right? And one of the jobs and challenges, Peter, that I think I give great credit to you as a body over the last year and a half is the excellent job that this city, underneath the leadership of Will Morthland, Lee Hills, Mike Palermo, Christine Hill, and yourself, Sarah, you weren't here, so I apologize, is underneath your leadership is, you said, look, we have to bring strategic alignment on everything we're doing. And no greater place than economic development. And as you well mentioned, we created a first casting division in economic development. We did the first iteration of economic planning. We're now going to the second iteration of economic planning. I want to make sure that my economic partner in this is strategically aligned and we're working on the same things. And that there are things sometimes that my partner sometimes, perhaps, we need to be working better together on. And that would be my ask of all of us, because I think you have the same request of us. I have the same request of you.
Absolutely.
And so you mentioned earlier about metrics. An attribution model is very simple. Attribution models are not difficult. Attribution models ask very, very clear questions. And I think for all of us, every time you're in leadership, it's always about your curiosity factor and your ability to keep asking yourself questions. And hey, I've got one piece of information. That's great. 560 new businesses. Awesome. All right. Now I need to determine a whole lot more information based upon the value of that. And those are fair questions to ask. But Peter, I don't want to cut you off if you had anything else to say, Sarah.
No. I'll just summarize I appreciate your comments, and what you just refreshed was that we have not defined that vision, so that asking of specific metrics, I would disagree with you on Steve's comfort zone of even bringing forward anything at this point, because what happens is, if it's a little off from what you think the vision is, which is not fully articulated, you'll come down pretty hard on, that's not the right direction. So why don't we work out our strategy, and then we can ask them for metrics? That's all I'm asking.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Palermo.
So I think this is well, that's loud. I think this is a very healthy discussion, because I think it is important that taxpayers are understanding what is the vision that the money they're spending is working towards. And I see actually the answer a little between the mayor's thoughts and Councilman Vanstrom's thoughts, which is I would like to see both. So yes, ultimately this mayor and council is the one that will set the vision. That being said, I think it'd be very helpful for the vision that Roswell Inc. is working towards to be something that is presented to mayor and council, for mayor and council to approve, deny, edit, change, but that I think it should be a process together, working together, knowing that ultimately it's the mayor and council that would finalize that and do that. But I think anytime we're spending money, it's important the vision is clear to the residents, and that it's certainly something that aligns with the vision set by mayor and council. But I think the most pressing question I think everybody wants to know, was it John Paul, was it Steve, was it Will, or was it Lee that decided you four would all wear light blue jackets? Because it's throwing me off.
Well
And I know it wasn't
done.
Will, because Will had to go home to change into
It
his
was
light
that
blue
text
jacket.
chain we're all
Yeah.
on, yeah.
Or that.
Yeah, or that.
Councilmember Morthler, did you? You're good. Okay. John Paul, Steve, anything else, sir?
Nope, that's it. Thanks. We'll let Andy come next.
Outstanding. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
See if answer. Okay, perfect. All right. Good evening, everybody.
I'm John Paul Kroom. I look just like the last guy. We have a unique board in that we have two distinct entities, one being Visit Roswell, and happy to do this, happy to present for Visit Roswell today. So let's see. So Andy's allowed me to have a couple of slides, so I will start with my first. The mission of Visit Roswell is to serve as the official destination marketing organization for the city of Roswell, to work with partners throughout the city to increase economic growth, foster tourism, product development, provide exceptional service for visitors in our community. As our values, we value friendliness, honesty, helpfulness, integrity, and competency to serve the public and provide reliable information that promotes the city and builds goodwill among the people with all we come in contact.
So for fiscal year '24, we will continue to market the destination to both visitor and resident audiences. There are two focal points here. There's obviously the visitor sentiment, because we are in the business of transient business. That's the easiest business to capture, because those individuals come into market and take in everything we have to offer, spend their money, and go home. We also equally understand that resident sentiment is very important, and that sometimes the audience you already have in your backyard is the easiest one to keep. So we do this in a way that we essentially put messaging in front of those to promote those local businesses, those city-operated assets and events, to influence that spending within our hotels, attractions, venues, parks, our restaurants, our breweries, retailers, and those city-operated special events, but also those third-party events that have economic impact as well. And as a part of that, we're positively impacting our community's quality of life through the promotion of those sought-after assets that currently exist and continue to get better. Really 6 key areas of focus for this next year. We're pretty aggressive and proactive in how we market the destination. We'll do paid advertising. That advertising focuses on what we consider to be demand generators to establish markets that are strategically selected based on data that we have. We generate group sales leads. This is our boots on the ground arm. And those leads are generated for specific venue and hotel bookings to drive that transient business. We respond to in-market visitor behavior for targeted advertising. I'll hit that a little bit, but we have an immense amount of data available now that tells us who we should be able to market to based on what they're doing and where they're coming from. So it's allowed us to really be kind of hyper-focused on what's working well and where are the areas of opportunity. We execute those mobile visitor services for fulfillment. So who do we talk to and how do we move them around through the community when they're already here? And how do we influence more visits and transactions? Amplifying the City of Roswell historic assets and events marketing, and then positioning Roswell as a statewide leader in tourism through our board involvement on various organizations. We really kind of break ourselves down into 3 different buckets: the sales and film arm, the marketing arm, and then those mobile visitor services arm, how we communicate to those individuals. 3 of us are full-time: Danielle with our marketing and visitor services manager, Ted, our director of sales and film liaison, and then Wednesday through Sunday, we have those street team specialists that are out and about in the community, whether it's at a park, at a special event, at a local business, getting in front of the visitors who are currently in market.
Okay, so this is an overview of the total request. As you can see there, it's broken out by payroll, marketing, advertisement, administrative, promotional sales, and our mobile visitor service. So the total request of $694. It's based on the restricted 43.75%. And the next slide, which you're familiar with, that has been used before, this is just how it's broken down. 43.75% of a forecast of 1.586 million in lodging tax revenues expected for next year. So it's based on that forecast. And then the remaining 37%, which would be almost 600,000, goes to the City of Roswell, unrestricted. And then another 18.75%, almost 300,000, would be part of the restricted TBD. This is me too.
That's it.
All right. So payroll and benefits are made up of the following. We have our salaries and wages, our federal unemployment tax, state unemployment tax, Social Security, Medicare, health, dental, life insurance, and retirement contributions.
This is a big one for us. This is where we put a lot of the bulk of our effort in the marketing and advertising side. Consists of our Camera Ready partnership with the Greater North Fulton Chamber, publication of the Points of Interest Guide, where we partner with the Historic Assets Department and also the Roswell Historical Society, annual Visitors Guide production and printing, Real Scout inventory platform to seek more film business, a lot of different paid and print and digital advertising for those seasonal and annual campaigns that hit feeder markets, hosting of visitroswellga.com and user-generated content incorporation, the design and installation of those quarterly event kiosks throughout town, paid social media, digital display and app display, event sponsorship that comes with deliverables. So how can we get in front of people who are attending events and get our collateral in front of them as well? Participation in the Topside Tap Trail, which is a co-op marketing program in partnership with Sandy Springs CVB and Awesome Alpharetta CVB. Constant photography that we use in our advertising, blog post publishing, influencer hosting, and social media reels, because a lot is moving that direction nowadays.
Okay, just a breakdown of administrative expenses, office rent, storage unit, telephone, audit and filing. We have separate offsite bookkeeping that we pay for, paychecks, payroll services, general insurance, and supplies.
The promotional sales, this is another area we put a lot of effort into as well. Hosting meeting planners, corporate meeting planners, brides, travel media, influencers, location scouts that are looking to bring business into the community, mileage and travel for industry education and board of directors events. We're often invited to speak to other communities through Georgia Municipal Association, Georgia City County Management Association on best practices. Smith Travel Research, this tracks our hotel occupancy, average daily rate, revenue per available room, and supply and demand. Dues and subscriptions to Southeast Tourism Society, Destinations International Event Impact Calculator, our CRM, which is how we manage all of our partners, several hundred partners throughout the community. Postage for visitors guide distribution and any collateral lead requests, promotional materials to get the word out about us and to drive visitors to the website, video production so that we can hit feeder markets through streaming services, more printing of collateral for lead fulfillment, and then Zartico geolocation insights. This year we partnered with Arrivalist that tells us what those visitors are doing in market, kind of really where they're going. Zartico kind of bumps that up to a next level and focuses on behavior. So for example, if we're targeting somebody from Charlotte, are we noticing trends that individuals that travel to Roswell from Charlotte are doing certain things? And that helps us kind of shift our messaging and hyper-focus based on what we see them doing, shifting our focus to market more specific information. Mobile visitor services, now that we've got this up and running, we've obviously raised the dollars to fund the purchase of it and outfit it. Now it's really kind of a pretty inexpensive model to get out there, and that pretty much consists of diesel, quarterly maintenance, quarterly detailing, annual insurance, tag registration, and any potential repairs. And then I'll kind of give you some insight into how we market. Within that 50-mile radius, that's a big base for us. That's what we consider a local visitor. Beyond 50, that's what we consider to be a tourist. For the purpose of what we do some hyper-local stuff that's really focused seasonally, but then throughout the year, we also focus primarily on Birmingham, Charlotte, Chattanooga, Greenville, Spartanburg Market, and Nashville. We geoframe certain attractions throughout the city. You can see here that we geoframe Perimeter Mall, Georgia Aquarium, the Battery. So when individuals travel and cross that threshold, they now begin receiving Visit Roswell marketing efforts. And then we take advantage of remnant rates through ads. So publications such as Condé Nast, if a $7,500 ad goes on sale for $1,500, we'll try to scoop that up to get in front of that audience. Our goals internally, these reflect anywhere from 3 to 5% growth. We want to bump that media impressions number up to 21,360,000. We want to drive 319,000 visitors to the website. We want to increase hotel occupancy to 64.17%, increase ADR, which is average daily rate, to $87.97 with the current hotel product we have. That will go up as product gets better. And we want to generate upwards of $28,086,199 in hotel revenue in fiscal year 24. And with that, I would entertain any questions.
Thank you, Andy. Council? Yes, sir. Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you. I have a couple questions, less hard-hitting than the last one.
Sure.
But can we go back to first off, the administration slide that you had, just those different administration costs? Yes, this one. I mean, out of curiosity, the financial and HR, bookkeeping, and paychecks, payroll services, I don't know if those numbers are in any way significant for an organization as small as you are, but if they are somewhat significant compared to your total budget, what I'm wondering, I don't know if it's a question for you two, or is it a question for David, or is it a question for Ryan, but basically wondering if are there some efficiencies that the city has that we could be helping you with and supporting you with, where it's not a dollar amount, but there's some type of relationship? Don't need the answer right now, but just throwing it out there. So, I mean, I would think for your number of employees, if we were to hire that many more employees at the city, it's a drop in the bucket because we have that bigger relationship. I would think, even from a financial and bookkeeping standpoint, I would think that there's some synergies that exist within the city. So just throwing it out, don't need an answer today, but kind of just an ongoing question for you two, as well as David, as well as Ryan. So that's my first question. Another question is with the van, you mentioned those costs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I thought, didn't you have sponsorships on
Yeah.
that? So do those sponsorships end up, what percentage of all these costs does the sponsorships end up paying?
Yeah, sure. The sponsorships were actually, that plan was formulated to fund the actual purchase of it. So the entire purchase, the wrap, the outfitting of it, we raised those dollars in about 3 weeks. Now, at this point, basically, they get deliverables as a part of that sponsorship. So really, think about that from the angle of the purchase and getting the vehicle up and running. Now, at this point, this is based on the annual budget, just based on fuel, getting that kind of out there in the community. So I would say the sponsorship portion of it was getting it up and running and getting it built out and everything. Now we're kind of just in operational mode.
Okay, thank you. I think those are my questions for now.
Councilmember Hall.
Thank you. Just a question for Ryan, or back to your expenses, the audit. Are they charged back for their audit? What is that audit charge that was on there?
The audit encompasses our HR, bookkeeping, grabbing files, and working directly with Ryan and his team and Chris Pike at the city to funnel information back and forth through that process.
Oh,
So it's added on to the bookkeeping service separately.
Okay, so that's just a charge your bookkeeper.
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
And what is your total budget? I may have missed it.
This year at $660,000, the request is going to be $694,060.
You said that you came up with that number based on purely what is the amount that's required from the hotel motel to go towards
Yeah, it's the minimum, based on the forecast, when we anticipate what the revenues from the hotels are going to be moving into this next year, and it's the minimum 43.75% restricted for TCT based on the 8%.
Basing it off your goal number, correct?
Yes, but the goal, I would say it's a conservative estimate, actually. It's probably going to be higher, but we like to go in conservatively.
Absolutely, makes perfect sense.
I'm sorry, just for my clarity, so your total budget is the 694?
That's correct.
And you don't have other revenue sources?
We have small revenues from a program we call Destination Signals, where it's like paid advertising, but it comes out to be about $4,000 annually. So it's not significant.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilman, Councilmember Bester?
So just to clarify, there's no ask, for the city for any funding beyond the hotel motel tax?
Our funding request comes only from the restricted minimum portion, so no additional general fund portion or TPD restricted portion.
Okay. I would like to make a comment just as a thank you when the questions are. Everybody have questions? Or just go ahead. Oh, we got a question here. Lee, go ahead.
Councilmember Hills?
Thank you. Thank you. Can you give a quick overview on your part-time crew? This is maybe double from last year. I have a suspicion, I know why, but can you just tell us how that works now?
Yeah, I would say the program's really working well. The program is based on flexibility, which is why it's successful. We base the same amount, each week it's based on the same amount of hours, unless, for example, we have a lot going on in the community. We double stack shifts, for example. But the way it works is we send that out to the different employees based on when they are accessible to work, which is what makes it well. So, for example, we might be at a coffee shop, and that shift for that week is going to be heavy in the morning. Well, the morning shift doesn't necessarily work out well for a lot of the staff, but it may for others. And same thing with, if we're working at a brewery in the evening. But the staff number it's a result of the success, I would say. And we're trying to consistently have that out Wednesday through Sunday so that we're out in front of people as consistently as possible.
I would just like to make a point on that too. I know Andy's very humble in general, but that mobile visitor center we get calls, or the Convention and Visitors Bureau gets calls from many other CBBs across the state and other states, because it was a very novel approach, especially, it started during COVID, but it's really taken off. And we've seen a lot of other visitor bureaus copy what Roswell's doing. They want to know what's happening in Roswell.
Thank you.
Councilmember Beeson?
To piggyback off of that, it was incredibly creative how Visit Roswell approached that, because that came out of the pandemic. So it was a way to adapt. I think in the past, and so I say this as a fairly biased individual up here, I think I'm the only one who's been on the board for Roswell Inc. in the past. So I do get to witness firsthand what Roswell Inc. does on the other side, which works in tandem with CVB. And I say this as somebody who runs a business here in Roswell. But seeing what you guys do on the CVB side, I know that's been a criticism in the past, is what is Visit Roswell doing? I don't see them out there. We're not the end audience here in Roswell. It goes to, I think Andy possibly coined this term, it's the daytime taxpayers. It's the ones that you're bringing into the city so that we can bring those revenues and support our local businesses as well. But Andy, you've done a really good job of bringing that in visibly internally with this mobile visitors unit, because I tell you what, I'm out and about with kids all the time. I see you guys everywhere with this van. We saw them just right now with the Live in Roswell as well. But seeing you guys in the community also helps us get to know our businesses, and I think it works really well in tandem with Roswell Inc. and the partnership that you guys have developed. And thank you to John Paul for that, as well as Steve. Just wanted to compliment all three of you, because I think that that's something that it's reflected in the community of where these tax dollars are going. And I wanted to make an aside, it is on page 61 going back to this budget. So it is based off of forecasting for lodging tax revenues. However, there is a remaining 37.5% that goes to the city of Roswell unrestricted and 18.75% to the city of Roswell unrestricted TPD. So it's not that you guys are encompassing all of those funds, it's a fraction of those funds, is that correct?
Yeah, we would be incentivized. The better the hotels do, the better the travel industry does, the better the funding is going to be received from the general fund and the TBD. So it would grow that portion of the budget as well.
Perfect.
And that leads me right to my point, if I could make it, and thank you so very much. Hope I didn't interrupt you. It was very interesting. There was some discussion going on about Alpharetta and how they've set up their CVB, and does that fall under the control of the local government? And did a lot of homework over that, and I really came up with some great information that I think moving forward, we're gonna form an even better relationship with the board and with Steve and with Andy, because if you look at what is going on in Alpharetta, it's all because of their increased hotel motel tax situation. The revenues that are coming into Alpharetta have set up a situation where it falls right into what Councilman Palermo was talking about, is that give and take. They have a Parks and Rec liaison on their board. They have a economic development liaison, which we started this year on the board. They have the mayor on the board. And there's a lot of give and take in information and exchanging of funds, quite frankly, between Parks and Rec, economic development, because it all ties into tourism. And the exciting thing that we have coming is we gotta get these hotels out of the ground, because when we start increasing those revenues and we start being able to play with those funds to help increase our Parks and Rec significance for our tourists and to increase our economic development and our restaurants and our Canton Street visibility, et cetera, combining both Roswell Inc. and what you do and what this board does, I think the sky's the limit. And I think the board, and I know that John and Paul are very open to those kind of communications where we do have much enhanced communication going on between the board, the city, and you guys. And that's going to be a wide open frontier of discussion going forward as we start seeing those revenues, because my compliment to you is you're running this on a dime. You get so many compliments statewide because you're doing this on so little revenue, $87 a night for a hotel. And look what you've done so far. So I really compliment you, and I look forward to the future where we're going with that. And thank you for that.
Councilmember Palermo.
Great comments, Councilman Vanstrom. I actually just have two clarifying questions and more so for anyone listening. And if you want to handle them, or if Ryan is going to, or David is going to handle them. But first question is, for the extended stays, which for the current existing hotels that we have, a number of them are currently extended stays, how many days is the stay where it does not contribute to the hotel motel tax?
Yeah, it hits about the 30-day mark, and so when somebody is staying in an extended stay for a portion of time, usually it's a 30-day threshold, they do not pay into that 8% lodging tax at that point.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, I mean, there would be no necessary benefit to the CVB other than them just existing as a product.
Yeah,
By law, we have to represent them to taxation, without representation, so we do list them. But the partnership we have with those hotels is vastly different than, for example, the DoubleTree, the Home 2 Suites.
And I'm bringing it up because from a city standpoint, the more traditional hotels that we all think of are providing a great benefit and value, which is to your organization and to the city, whereas in the extended stays, they're not providing that same benefit for the reason you just mentioned. So you said that's about 30 days. My other question is just out of curiosity. The first one I knew the answer to. I don't know the answer to this one. Now, a bed and breakfast, does that pay a hotel motel tax?
Yes.
It does. Okay. Excellent. So that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Andy, just to kind of echo or buttress on Peter's kind of bringing up Alpharetta. You're probably familiar with the 503c6 in Alpharetta.
Yes.
And the 501c6, always screw that up. And to kind of Peter's point, that there is an incredible strategic alignment economically. In other words, if we were to set this up today, or 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and Steve's still in the room, I think sometimes there's a confusion, I would say, that sometimes the dog is leading, the horse is leading, what's the axiom? Cart before the horse. And I think sometimes as we have that challenge, because like, for example, I would say that there needs to be tremendous synchronicity with Jeff Leatherman. There needs to be tremendous synchronicity with Randy Knight as a consequence of all the things that are currently in play, which I dare say you guys may not even know 10% of them. And you need to know 100% of them because they fall into what we want to do on our overall economic strategy and obviously our CVB business. And there are so many things that I don't sense that we're very good at that as a city right now, that we're really tied to the hip together. And I think sometimes as you guys got created and said, go do it, right? And you had to figure out how to do it. Same thing, Roswell, go do it. You had to figure out how to go do it. And it's a little, you got new players in town and said, look, we're going to create a long-term economic strategy for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And that's hard, right? There's an adjustment period. It is an adjustment because you've been doing this, as Peter said, on a dime, on your own. Figure it out. Like, I gotta go, I don't know what success looks like, but I gotta go figure that out. Same thing with Roswell Inc. But part of the challenge is that the city is creating a long-term holistic economic strategy. And it's gotta have its organizations in line with that. And sometimes I think it seems like the organization's going off this way and saying, hey, we're gonna keep going regardless of what you're gonna do. And that is, from my perspective, Peter, what has got to change, is that the economic strategy has got to be in alignment across all our organizations. I think that is absolutely, has to happen without any question. And, you know, that everybody is, because I think we all want the same thing. And we all want this amazing city to thrive, but not thrive just today, but thrive 20 years from now. And what we do today will determine that. So I appreciate the great efforts you guys are doing. Thank you. And I appreciate you guys coming before us today. And we look forward to taking, yes, sir, Councilman Worthland.
Talking about the mobile visitor van, if, for those of us that don't know, if you were to request that van to come and show up at an event for an individual or for a group or anything, does that individual have to pay for that van to show up, or is that just more of a courtesy that?
No way. The more people we can get in front of and influence, the better. We actually have a form on our website where any nonprofit or third party or the city, for example, could request us to be. One of our biggest partners is the rec department with the different events that are taking place, and honestly just pop it up at a park on a nice good day with weather. But if it fits, I think there are some basic criteria. If it's T-Mobile selling a bunch of hot dogs, maybe not going to go to that one, for example. But if it's, an Alive in Roswell, a 5K, Tillman Auto Run's a prime example, we would love to be there. And we want to get in front of as much of a diverse audience as we can. Because if we're in front of the same audience all the time, then we're pitching the same information. We already know the types of questions they're going to ask and what they want to do. If we can hit different people in different areas and have different conversations, that's going to help us do our job better and understand the visitor better.
And also the brand of Roswell. We've had several conversations about branding Roswell and putting it out there in public spectrum, T-shirts, hats, the whole thing. I'd like to see us take the next step forward and see some of these shirts that you can buy in the private stores.
Well, that's a good point. So there's going to be a branding and stakes plan that will be put forth by the council in a year. And obviously, we want everybody on the same page. Like, that's a great example. There's going to be a wholesale branding and stakes plan for the city, probably done by the end of the year. And obviously, it's hugely important that we're on the same page on that. Like,
We were just asked to be invited to that conversation.
you are absolutely a pivotal part of that conversation, 110%, integral. From my 2 cents, you and Jeff Leatherman can't talk enough.
Sure.
I mean, you really can't. Like, he's pivotal to this whole piece as well. Council, any other thoughts, comments, or questions? Andy, jump. Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Beeson.
Real quick point of personal privilege. I will hype you guys. You do have items that you can purchase from the truck or the van. I have a fancy blue hat that I wear a lot. So you can get some items from them, but to the
Go
mayor's-
buy them now, is what you're saying.
Yes, it's nice weather time. You need a new hat or a shirt. But to the mayor's point, I think it would be helpful to include y'all in those branding conversations.
Absolutely, sure.
Where do you go to buy them, Andy?
Mobile Visitor Center sells them, mugs, hats, T-shirts, good stuff. And then, obviously you can reach out to us and we'll get them to you. We hand deliver them to people.
Is there a website or someplace that people can go to buy them now?
Yeah, you can do an inquiry, but we're looking at going e-commerce with it where we could sell them. Right now, just for the point of getting them out in the community, they're primarily out of Mobile Visitor Center. E-commerce on the website would be the next step.
You've got inventory, though. You need to sell it.
Oh, yeah, sure,
Okay.
always.
Very good. Anything else, Andy or John Paul?
Good here, thank y'all.
Thanks so much for being with
Yes,
us
sir.
tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I tell you what, would the entire crowd like to suffer through another 50 minutes? If not, we definitely understand you guys want to quickly disperse. Thank you for coming. Yes, sir.
Bring that chair right here.
Okay.
Ilan, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having
Are
me.
you by yourself?
No, I've got travel.
Scott Hitch is coming up, right? Come up, Scott.
Reluctantly.
I leave the talking to the expert, but I'll join you, sure.
Well, make sure, tell everybody who you guys are so everybody knows. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having us, Mayor Wilson. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ilan Buchan. I'm the program director for Roswell Arts Fund. Mayor Wilson, Roswell City Council, thank you so much for having us as a partner. Present to you tonight our fiscal year 24 project ideas, direction, talk to you about how we got here today, and a little bit about what ideas we have planned for coming next year. So we are an independent 501c3 nonprofit established in 2014. We are the designated arts agency for the city of Roswell. Being independent means it renders we must ask for operational as well as programmatic dollars to fulfill our charge. We are charged with the execution of public art planning, programming, and methodology for the city of Roswell. That means not only completing specific programs related to the public art master plan, but also inform policy, work with developers, city staff, and sponsors in the creation of public art and economic development activities. Now, Mayor Wilson last year asked us to implement the public art master plan in, sorry, I'm too loud for my own good, beg your pardon. Feedback. To implement the public art master plan within 4 years, a vision document. And so we delivered that, and we had last year was year 1, which was called Building from the Past, and now we're entering into year 2, which was called Refine and Expand Scope and Spec, which I'm thankful we called it that because that is exactly where we are. So the 4-year vision document did identify opportunities and locations, suggested types of programming and implementation, demonstrable impacts once completed, and project life cycle. So the important part of this document was to not just repeat year to year, but it was meant to grow, refine, grow, establish, and kind of figure out what the public art for the city of Roswell would meant to be over a period of time. It identified these key locations that are, of course, our parks and trails, infrastructure, meaning our utility boxes, guardrails, bollards, pipes, and so forth, and our gateways. These are our thresholds into our different neighborhoods, our communities, also gateways of different visual thresholds, meaning traveling between a strip mall and a commercial area, single-family homes, multi-use properties, and so forth, as well as our corridors. Those are these alleys that connect our city assets, these spaces along the river, for example, along our parks, or even in the space traveling between City Hall and Canton Street. So what were some takeaways from year 1? What is changing? What ideas are there for FY24? And then a summary of points, as well, of course, leaving plenty of room for questions. So we did have some great successes as well as great opportunities in year 1. There was immediately a demonstrated need for a comprehensive design framework or aesthetic treatments. These are design tools in defining the characters of Roswell. We'll get into a little bit more about that. That there needs to be more trail activation and activity, engagement in public artworks. And then finally, creating and estimating a maintenance plan. So with estimated costs over the next 5 years. Our permanent art collection, bike racks, and monuments do not currently have a cohesive maintenance plan, how artwork is assessed, when it is maintained, by whom, how often, and costs associated. We did, of course, launch the first round of the Painted Utility Box program. It was a great success, so much so that other municipalities have looked to us to ask about best practices, how we went about doing it, how we made the selections we made. Each box was carefully worked upon with the artist to establish theming unique to that location. Allowed for a great deal of different artwork types, but each one looking like it's kind of been there for ages as it just makes sense to that geographic spot. Again, going back to the design language, in preliminary design discussions, it became clear that there wasn't a cohesive aesthetic approach. Namely, how do we define the different characters of Roswell and then pull threads through those different characters to define aesthetically what it means to be Roswellian. Obviously, this was sort of a mood board or an emotional board that would say, do these feel like Roswell? What feels like Roswell? How do we have that conversation? And that just tipped the iceberg, saying we need to have further conversations, a much deeper dive. Now, I know there is a discussion that a contractor may be coming on board, doing a full typology or design analysis, The mayor alluded to that in the previous presentation. And we look forward to working with that contractor in whatever capacity works well for the city. So I'll get a little bit more into that in that slide, but just saying that we are open and able to work with, in alignment with the city on that design initiative. So refine and expand scope and spec. This means growing on lessons learned, developing scope and scale, more locations and different periods of exhibition. Now what is usually known as the Art Around Sculpture Tour, back as an umbrella concept. So it was originally conceived as art around the city of Roswell that encompassed all artworks, more targeted and more activated. Activating the hiking trails and always being nimble and responsive to the growing number of opportunities held throughout the city. So Art Around Roswell, activate and aspire. The umbrella concept allows for the creative economy to be more engaged. This includes our restaurant and our food and agriculture areas, our gardens. So our chefs, our cooks, are creators. They are makers deserving of being celebrated. Our film and media partners, music performing. It's not just the sculpture tour anymore. These are a handful of ideas collected with our stakeholder conversations with City Council and other stakeholders, and we would love to do all of these, but these are just a handful of ideas that came up. Those include wayfinding health hiking challenges, placing a storage container that rotates restaurant pop-ups that are really exciting right now on social media and Instagram. Doing a porch fest of our historic properties with a maker market working with Roswell Fire Labs. It's a combination of the old celebrating with the new. Activating our economy. Of course, there is the food tour and restaurant week, but this would host competitions to really celebrate those individual cooks and chefs of Roswell. Of course, being nimble to those opportunities. We have Oxbow coming in the coming months, commissioning works of art to speak to the future of what Roswell arts can be, and even installing works along the path to Canton Street. Now, this is on the trails. Right now, I'm calling it Discovery of the Hidden. There are much better names out there. That's just what I've come up with for right now. But this is an engagement in 4 or 5 of the trail systems. This is pictures taken from a piece I did on the Atlanta Beltline, installing small clay villages in the nooks and crannies, crevices of the rock surfaces. This is the installation of hidden works in the creek beds and the cracks, the tunnels, the rocks of our trails, to drive the message that the art of Roswell is truly into the very ground that we walk, into the fabric of our culture. It's for a small investigation, does not detract from your natural experience, but is aided with sort of this, with the wayfinding and the healthy hiking challenge, kind of a comprehensive experience of the trail. The painted utility boxes would continue, but expand to the pipes, the concrete risers. Those are these concrete housings that hold the manhole covers along the river. The guardrails and parking bollards. Of course, we'd also talk to Georgia Department of Transportation and RDOT and Georgia Power to expand the footprint into utility boxes that not only are owned by Roswell, but to expand into these more commercial and mixed-use areas. And then again, looking at the public art framework or typologies. Now, this was an example of a topology system I worked on at the Atlanta Beltline. Whether a contractor comes on board that will do a full typology analysis of opportunities and characters, and we would work with that contractor, or if this project would be pivoted to a complete another idea, such as youth athletic statuary, we are completely flexible, want to work with mayor and council on what is the best utilization of that. But this was created back in February, so we wanted to fulfill on that task. The Corridors project, our first year is actually coming online June 24th. The first year that was funded last year will be coming online June 24th, run all summer through the end of September. The themes of that exhibit will be family, play, and our response to nature, our living in nature. This is a collection of visual works that will be on display. To give you guys an idea on the metrics of that in terms of numbers of productions, we're 10 to 12 visual works, 10 to 12 performing artists participating, even more number of performances, and 10 to 12 workshops. So this is a complete activation, festival-like environment of this space. And that is between Riverside Park and Don White Park. Again, maintenance being a critical component, albeit not as exciting. This would be a number that would be variable depending on how the first assessment comes back that is being conducted right now. So this maintenance would establish what are the immediate needs, how is the maintenance to be conducted, how much will it cost over the next 1, 3, and 5-year periods. And it's important to get a kind of baseline establishment. Again, that number is variable. It may reduce depending on the assessment that comes back. Finally, we are independent. This will be the amount requested to keep our doors open and functioning is $75,000. I should mention, just as an aside, you will all receive budgetary history documentation, 5-year budget history, as well as FY23 budgets. But just giving you an idea of where we are in terms of that request. We've got $266,000 overall to keep our doors open. Around $196 goes to salaries, and no, it's okay, it's okay. $196 goes to salaries, and 65 goes to office operations. And with that, I will take any questions you may have.
Thanks, Alon. Any comments or questions from Councilmember Hall?
I would just like to recognize both Alon and my colleague, Councilmember Hills. This relationship has just really blossomed and taken off this past year, and you guys are really working hard, and I just want the public to really, really understand how you're busting your tails to pull this program together. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Any other thoughts, comments, or questions from Councilmember Beeson?
Clarify, how much of your income comes from non-city resources?
Sure. So we're looking at about a total project load of about a 60-40 split, city to non-city. So we still pursue grants, independent resources, corporate sponsorships, individual donors, and so forth. But it's very important for us to, one, deliver high-quality product, but also to give them, maximize the most value you get for the dollar at City of Roswell. So historically, and this is several years ago, the Roswell Arts Fund would produce Art Around Roswell as a sculpture tour, and that was the exclusive product delivered. Right now, we are producing, many more products, many more projects for every dollar invested. So I want there to be as much return on investment for the city as possible.
Councilmember Beeson, yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Follow up. So you also are bringing on, you had mentioned when we did our one-on-one, when you were doing council priorities, you're bringing on somebody who specializes in development. So that's fundraising as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He just came on board in December. Aaron is a development director, and his primary charge is to create a diverse funding pool so that we are not as reliant upon the city, but also so that we can better complement the work the city does.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Councilmember Hills?
Thank you, Mayor. For the benefit of viewers, listeners, et cetera, can you just expound a little bit for, I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about these temporary installations, but can you talk about the painted utility boxes, longevity, expectations, and then also like discovery of the hidden, what the longevity piece of that is,
Sure.
Why that's important, and I will add, particularly for those that may not get it or like art, if you want to say that, could you just give us a little bit of background on that and philosophy and how we actually execute those two in particular?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the question. So first of all, the painted utility boxes, the expectation is that, of course, there's the no-brainer stuff, which is exhibited safe for the public, accepted by an 8-year-old to an 80-year-old, all of the things that are no-brainer. But then there's also the high-quality artistic execution expectation, high artistic merit. There is the expectation that the city maintains the right to, at any point, for no explanation needed, change that artwork. If the city needs to do anything to that box, or anyone does, that box goes back to plain gray, whatever needs, as merited. At a 2-year point, we evaluate that box and say, do we like the way it looks? Does it need to be changed, painted over, what have you? That is also that something needs to happen. This space will go back to what it was before, sooner or later, and we want to make sure it's the right thing for us and for the artists coming later. Pertaining to the hidden, also temporary work, that'll be in 4 to 5 trail systems on exhibit for 3 to 6 months, depending on the effectiveness of the work and the longevity of it. Again, artistic merit has to be extremely high, and the quality of the work has to be very high at any point. During that, if anything is of question, it's taken out and deinstalled immediately. For those that don't get art or don't like art, I feel you. We are all consuming art constantly, whether or not we know so. The idea of this is that within 7 seconds, you get it. You appreciate it, you love being in that space where that art is, and you didn't think of oh, I'm looking at a piece of artwork. It's about just loving that space, enjoying it, and wanting to spend more time in that space as a result.
Councilmember Palermo.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to point out, so I appreciate this is a great presentation, very clear. So of course, the 465 is the request, 100% of city money is the 465 request. Because, so probably in part, thanks to your great partnership and hard work along with Councilmember Hills, last year is when the Roswell Arts Fund received the most money in the history of the Roswell Arts Fund. And then obviously this year is a request for an even larger amount.
Right.
And I'd say I certainly, obviously will need a little more time and look forward to kind of walking through each item because it obviously is a large number. That being said, I think the Roswell Arts Fund has certainly had some great projects and ones I would have never thought of. I'll tell you actually, Discovery of the Hidden actually sounds really interesting and unique and really just interesting to me. Just as I felt you were so, Roswell Arts Fund was so effective and successful with when you created the pictures of art through here, where it wasn't just one where someone was needing to either decide to walk to that or not, but it was kind of giving you something to do as you were walking, towards Camden Street or whatnot. So I definitely think that one's a really, really interesting one, and definitely again just appreciate your hard work in the partnership with the city and allowing you taking the time to want to meet with everyone. And I think probably any morning I've ever come to City Hall, I think I see you and Councilmember Hills together meeting.
Thank you, Councilmember Palermo. I also want to mention you are so absolutely right to be so scrutinizing of the dollars, and I want to be in the trenches figuring out what is the very best utilization and investment of those dollars, getting the most return. So any questions, thoughts, comments into any of the projects I think is extremely warranted and valuable.
Councilmember Worthland.
For the art that we see on the pads around town, can you give us a rundown on how that art is chosen, where it comes from, the whole process behind that? Because I do seem to get questions around that art in particular of all things. Everybody loves painted boxes, the gnomes in the forest and the rock line, that's really cool. But I do get questions all the time about the art that is on the pads.
Yeah.
Where does that come from, and do we as mayor and council get a say in the art that goes on that pad?
Sure. So the pads, historically, it's been conducted by an open RFP process. So that is solicited nationwide and sometimes even international in its submissions. And then those submissions come in via that process. Collected selection panel of stakeholders is convened of art experts, city staff, city members, council's invited to attend and go through that entire process. Those are scored via artistic merit, feasibility, all these criteria. The top scoring items get into the project. That is one way, and way historically, that it has been done. There are also other ways of doing it, and that's, for example, how painted utility boxes was also conducted. After that selection process, there's also subsequent meetings that happen with council regarding the different pieces, their artistic effectiveness, sketches that come in from the artists and so forth. So there's a lot of steps and regulation opportunities for input in the creation process. That is one way of procuring the art. Another way is through invitational artistic calls, which those are, you specifically are looking for a style, type, or artist direction, and you target that with a selected call. So that is another way of approaching procurement that the PADS has not gone that way in the past. Now for art around going forward, there are different ways to approach that. So depending on how the project goes about, there will be criteria that we establish together on how to go about, for example, the restaurant pop-up. How does one select a restaurant pop-up idea? So creating those practices so it is still fair for anyone who would wish to be a part of that.
Thank you, Alon. Any other? Councilmember Vanstrom.
Yeah, knowing how thorough councilperson Hills is, this is probably a question that I know the answer to, but you mentioned grants, and so I just want to ask and make sure, with Danny Blitch and the city, how much have you worked with him? Do you feel like you've exhausted that opportunity and we've got to go outside that realm?
No, I never feel like I've exhausted the opportunity. In fact, often I feel like there are always more popping up, but unique ways of thinking. The important part with any grant opportunity is not creating new work in order to pursue a grant. So you're sort of, that's
Thank
the-
you very much for that incredible statement that most people don't get. Alon,
Okay.
you just said something incredibly powerful that most people just don't get. And you could benefit from that. Thank you. That's an incredible illumination. I wish everybody got what you just said, because people pursue grants all the time in government, and they create basically more work for themselves rather than actually achieving the mission that they're
Correct.
accountable for achieving.
Yeah, we could easily create a $55,000 project to make a $5,000 amount, but create a $50,000 expense in brand new project initiative, which is off base for our mission. So there are plenty of opportunities. I always welcome more, working with Danny and other partners. But we've been very fortunate in the past year with further grant opportunities coming out. With Aaron coming on board, we're also hoping for great new things in the near future.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions, council? So, Elon, thank you from a very grateful mayor. I was scared to death when Gila left, beginning of last year, and, thought we started something really good. And then all of a sudden, she leaves us, and, man, you've really stepped up. You've done a great job for the city, great job for the Roswell Arts Fund. Scott, thank you for your leadership. But, Elon, I just can't tell you. And Lee, you've been a superhero. You have, I don't think our residents know how much you put into this and really bring a resident's perspective to this. Thank you so much. So, yeah, yes, thank you guys very much. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
All right, up next is Roswell Historical Society. Judy. Welcome, Judy. Let everybody know who y'all are so they watch it on TV or can know.
Yep, I should
Thank you
know
for
better.
being here.
Thank you for having us here this evening. I just want to say, everyone that I've been hearing so far is talking about the future, and their focus is on the future. The Roswell Historical Society is just the opposite. We focus on the past. And the fact that we're concerned about growing our businesses and making this a place where everybody wants to come. I think there was a man named Roswell King years ago that had that same idea when he started the Roswell Manufacturing Company, he and his son. And we have all the goods on that. We have all the documents, the pictures, the artifacts, all those things. And finally, after all these years, we now have the museum where we can share it with the people of Roswell and the people that come to visit Roswell that want to know what makes Roswell so special. And it's the people that are here now, but it's thanks to the people that came back in the 1830s and created and maintained through all kinds of adversities what we're enjoying today. So that being said, Kevin and I both truly appreciate our partnership with the city. And that partnership includes the fact that we not only have all those documents and things from the founding families and on through time, but also a lot of the historic information from the city of Roswell. So when the city of Roswell needs information, when I was on the Preservation Commission, people would come and ask questions, and I would say to them, you need to call Elaine De Niro at the Roswell Historical Society, because she knows all of it. And she does, and she helps the city when we need answers. And thanks to Elaine and Kevin, we now have that wonderful museum. And I think all of you have been up there to see it. And don't forget, it's not going to stay just like it is forever. It's going to be changing over time so that we can share all those things that have been carefully packed away in the archives all these years. And now they can come out and be shared. And people can learn the great history. I did the 8th grade walking tours some years ago, and I was talking to a group of 8th graders and saying that history is nothing more than the stories of the people that came before us. And one of the little boys said, I get it, it's his story. That's history. So we're going to try to make it fun with everything that we have up there in the museum. But we probably are going to need your help again this year, because we have Elaine, of course, doing an absolutely fantastic job. Her salary is up a bit, same a number of hours and whatnot, but of course she probably deserves at least twice that for all the work she does. But we're asking for the $36,500. That is her hourly, her salary plus the taxes. And then when we opened the museum, it was necessary to have someone that would be sitting there in the museum, welcoming people, making sure that they weren't leaning on any of our historic furniture or displays, and that nobody takes anything when they leave. So we did hire a museum guest services coordinator, Yvonne Howell. She is doing an absolutely fantastic job. She had worked at the Atlanta History Center, so she had some background in this, and she is greeting people and talking with them when they come in, answering their questions. Sometimes it's a matter of looking up in our beautiful history of Roswell, that green book that nobody can find anymore, and getting them the information that they're looking for. She's also doing some of the administrative work. We just got our rack cards done. She's going all over town and leaving them in places where people will see what we're doing, and our hours of operation, which are Wednesday through Saturday, 11 to 3. That's when Yvonne is up there. And so we're asking for her salary of $21,000 for her. Now this next one, and I don't have a whole lot of information, as you went through and probably saw, there's nothing in there about an archival assistant, but this has been discussed and is a concern, and really became very obvious to us that we need somebody that knows what Elaine does, because she does such a magnificent job and has so many things in her head that someone else needs to learn. So we're hoping to get a little help with that and hire an archival assistant who would be working with Elaine and learning what she's doing, and obviously going forward spending more time there until Elaine is ready to retire. She's been out the last week or two with some medical problems, and that made it really clear to us. We need to have somebody there that can do what she does as well as she does it. Okay, so if you see in the, these are all the things that she is doing, which she is just amazing. When people come in with their families, pictures and artifacts and all kinds of things, she has to decide which of those things are really important enough to put into our museum, which goes into the archives for the time being. And we don't have a lot of space, although when we were able to take over some of the other offices and the processing space, and you'll see a couple pictures of those, we were able to bring some things that were being stored off-site. So we now have everything all in one place. We have space for her to actually do some of the work that she does. When something comes in, it's not just put in a box. There's many steps that go into that, and she has the workspace. Let me just, I think that's enough on that slide. Here is the museum, and I hope that looks familiar to most of you. If you look on this top picture, if you look straight through to the back where you see the dress, that's what people see when they walk into the museum. That's the first thing. And then to the left where you see the river and the trees, that starts out with the indigenous people. We have arrowheads that are 13,000 years old. So it's an amazing collection. All around the walls you'll see, that's the permanent, where these pictures are, those are the founding families. And all the way through the enslaved, the farmers, our history on the outside walls. Down the middle that you see the display cases, that's where things will be changed out, probably around every 6 months or so. That is a collection for Civil War information. And I know some of you probably have been up there more than once. I go in there, but I'm taking care of things too. But I haven't had the time to go through and actually read everything. So I hope when people come, they plan to be there for a little bit so you can really spend some time.
Do you have a question, Councilmember Vanstrom? Do you have a question?
Yeah, actually I did. Yeah, do you guys charge for admission from 11 to 3?
No, we don't.
Would you be opposed to having some form of a request for donation upon admission?
We have, well, we don't ask for donation for admission, but we do have a nice little fishbowl sitting up on Yvonne's desk there, and people are leaving money there.
Okay, well, we have to get you a QR code.
That may come in the future, but when we're opening, we just want people to come up now and
On
see
the
it.
panel wall, where you see the dress, if you look on this, if you've been up there, the wall adjacent to that does have the QR code for
You know, the truth, Judy and Kevin, is we need to give you guys need a lot more promotion from us. You need a lot more
Yes.
time. You're amazing what the Historical Society does. Probably the best value for the dollar that the city spends in quality of life. Talk about really getting it done, is you guys. I mean, it is a tremendous bargain for a taxpayer dollar in what you're providing and what you're continuing to preserve. You guys do an amazing job. We need to give you more time, and we need to find a way to celebrate you. I'm in trouble time. Lynn's over here giving me the evil eye.
Well, if anybody has any questions, other than, this is where we've expanded, and it's wonderful. So thank you very much for giving us all that space. That's what we needed. That's what we had hoped for many years.
So thank you guys for what you do.
appreciate that.
See, I mean, I think the council feels unanimously, very strongly about the efforts of what y'all do.
Thank you.
Really do. Thank you so much. And thank you for your presentation. And we'll find a way, let's find a way to make them special and give them some special time.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Judy. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, guys. And I apologize, but I'm going to get in trouble with Lynn. And so we have one left, which is the Roswell Historical Beautification Project. Renee, are you here? Hi, Renee. Historic Roswell, sorry, it's what happens when I don't wear my glasses. I am so sorry. HRBP, otherwise known, Historic Roswell Beautification Project, led by Renee Shirley. Welcome, Renee.
I am just the flower girl.
You're much more than that.
So, I am Renee Shirley, the Executive Director of the Historic Roswell Beautification Project. Here we go. We were founded in late 2016, and we became a 501c3 in 2018. So we are in about our 7th year beautifying the Roswell Historic District streetscape and partnering with the city of Roswell. Our mission is to create, maintain, and preserve the beauty and charm, thank you, of our streets, improve civic pride, and enhance the overall historic Roswell experience for our citizens and visitors. In last year's presentation, I mentioned that there are 2 pet peeves of mine. One's public speaking and the other one was asking for money. Well, nothing's changed. I'm still challenged in those areas, but since I don't really get a chance to speak with you often, like once a year, I wanted to take an opportunity to say thank you to some people and to just focus on some of the positives from last year before sharing our FY 2024 funding request. I wanted to first and foremost say thank you for all of our volunteers who pick out a time and push our 20-gallon water carts up and down the street 3 days a week to water plants. This is Tom and Diane Dwayne, and they are regular helpers. There's some volunteers who've been have given their time since the very beginning. If you're interested in volunteering, please go to beautifulroswell.org and click on volunteer, or you can visit roswellgov.com and click on I want to, and then click on explore volunteer opportunities, and you'll find us there. I want to thank Megan Boynton in the grants department, who's been very helpful with adding HRBP to the city's volunteer sign-up. Several students looking for service hours last year found us on the website, so we were very thankful for that. Independent Sector is a national organization that provides policy leadership across the charitable industry, and each year they calculate the value of a volunteer hour. In 2022, their estimated national value of each volunteer hour was $29.95 an hour. And understanding the value of volunteers to nonprofit organizations is important because it helps the city leaders like you guys understand the financial value of community involvement. Approximately 1,602 HRBP volunteer hours were given to the city last year, and this represents a savings of labor costs equal to $47,980. I wanted to talk about business support. We are so thankful for the businesses on Canton Street. There are several of them that have helped us along the way since the beginning. They've given the support to us. I want to thank Doug and the Curling family who graciously allow us to store our water carts under their desks, use their power for the pump batteries and their water. There are also 8 other businesses on the street now who allow us to use their water. And there is no way that we could keep the plants alive without the assistance of these businesses. I also wanted to give a shout out to Gate City and the Roswell Wine Festival. Gate City hosted an event, it's called Give Back Mondays last year, to several nonprofits, and where you could pick a day to go and they would donate $1 of each beer that was bought. And so we raised a little money there. And the Roswell Wine Festival chose HRBP as their recipient of proceeds from the 2022 Wine Festival, and they gave us a check for $10,000 last year. So we're also thankful to the Roswell Rotary and Roswell Women's Club, who are other nonprofit organizations devoted hundreds of volunteer hours to the city of Roswell. Citizen support. A huge thank you goes to the citizens of Roswell who have donated and supported HRBP since we started. The 2 photos you see in this slide are park benches donated by these citizens. The Lynch family honored their parents, Mary and Tom, with a park bench. They're right there on my left. Mary and Tom have worked really hard for the city in many capacities as volunteers, but a lot of their volunteer time was with the Roswell Historical Society. And sadly, we lost Tom last year, but this park bench is a remembrance of Tom and demonstrates his love for the city. The other bench was donated, The other bench was donated by the Vickers apartment neighbors. They donated this park bench to the Historic District in honor of their mom, of one of their neighbors who passed away during COVID, and a memorial service couldn't be held, so they donated that bench. So not only does our community invest in us by giving their time, but they also contribute financially. City support. We're grateful to the city employees in Public Works, Parks and Rec, and RDOT who've repaired pavers, assembled park benches, mounted plaques, delivered trash receptacles to the street. We still don't have enough trash receptacles on the street, by the way. Just thought I'd throw that in. And water baskets and planters in the heart of Roswell Park and Roswell Square.
Hold on, Renee, let me see. Is Jeff in here? That Jeff? How about the other Jeff? Is the other Jeff in here? He snuck out, didn't he? Well, one Jeff heard it, right? I did. Okay.
And the RoswellGov.com, the Report and Issue app works great. I just wanted to mention that to you guys. I encourage everyone to download that app onto their phone. Any issue that needs attention can be reported on the Roswell app under Report and Issue. I've used it numerous times since it first was on the site. Most of the items I've reported have been safety-related issues like fallen tree limbs, paver repair, fallen lampposts, potholes, stuff like that. You can take a photo at the site of the issue, and the app pinpoints exactly where you are, and the respective department can be notified of the location. You can describe the problem, and they will respond to you right away. And I have found it very helpful, and the city department is very responsive whenever I've used this app. So.
Yeah, Renee, I've got some complaints. So I think Mr. Knighton thinks you're using it too much, so he's telling you to back off a little bit. I'm joking.
Okay.
I gotta say one
Not
thing, by the
really.
way.
So we're grateful for the support from our volunteers, our businesses, our citizens, and the city employees, for their help this year. I just wanted to stick this in. This is some progress that I think is made, and this all has to do with civic pride, which is part of our mission. We want to improve civic pride. This is a photo of a new establishment, I've got 3 minutes, located on Elizabeth Way, and a champagne and wine tasting thing. Obviously, the difference here is a little bit of landscape makes a large difference. Civic pride is contagious, and that's all I want to say about that. When one business improves their streetscape, others are encouraged to follow suit. So here we go with our budget requests for 2024. Flowers, ongoing maintenance, and assistance from city employees, and I'm going to mention the money right now. Flowers for 2 seasons, that's fall and winter and spring and summer. That includes flowers, installation, fertilization, and maintenance for hanging baskets and planters. And we also need to replace the liners in all of the hanging baskets this year in the fall. Each liner in those 48 baskets are $45 a piece, so it's a bit of an expense. So the total requested for 2 seasons of the flowers this year is $39,259. Ongoing maintenance, we have a landscaper that comes to the city, and he helps clean from Goulding down south, down to the corner of Magnolia, 3 times monthly in the fall and winter, and 4 times monthly in spring and summer. The total we were requested there is $26,000. To my knowledge, the city does not have a regular landscape maintenance on Canton Street. I called the city and asked someone one day, and they said they don't. If there's a special event that's coming up, then they are out there. But otherwise, there's no scheduled regular landscape maintenance. So we feel it needs more attention, and so we have somebody out there cleaning that up. And so, and we also add, that $26,000 also adds fresh mulch that we put out every spring for Roswell Alive, the first Roswell Alive. We're also asking for continued assistance from the city crew. Parks and Rec, Nick Passer-Chia's team, Doug Smith, Will Erdmansick, and DeJuan Simpson have mainly helped us with receiving park benches when they're delivered, assembles them, and then they place them up on the street for us. Ronnie Wilkes and Jeff Cryer are the main guys who help keep the heart of Roswell Park and Roswell Square watered. Some of the public works crew were out here, repairing sidewalk pavers that posed a problem with walkability. That was a couple of slides back. Challenges. These are the same challenges I mentioned to you last year. We have an issue with East Alley, the backs of the restaurants and establishments, and the declining trees are still declining. So something needs to be done. I know that there is a tree plan that we have. I don't know what has been done, if anything, on that, but those trees are important to the historic district. And East Alley is another thing that needs help. So, lastly, Heart of Roswell Park. We're looking forward to partnering with the city on this project. Heart of Roswell Park is an underutilized gateway. I'm almost done. To the Canton Street merchant area and restaurant zone. It has many opportunities for beautification, and we look forward to partnering with the city on this project. Any more questions? Go to beautifulroswell.org or email me at beautifulroswell@gmail.com.
You did great, Renee. Yeah, give her a hand, exactly. Jeff, did you want to add any comments back there from your perspective? Because I know you're working on so much of this as well, and I know we're bringing HRPP to part of your planning.
Sir, I think we've got, just as you said, a lot of projects going on.
Including Canton Street and some of the East Alley, which has been a big project of yours. Comments, thoughts, or questions? Councilmember Palermo.
Couple things. So thank you so much for the work you do and your volunteers. I'm definitely glad to have supported your organization for since fiscal year 18 is when it started, as you know, which you mentioned was about the 7 years. 2 things I wanted to mention, or 3 things. Don't expect you to have the answer this second, but one of them I'd be curious for the request on the flowers for the planters as well as the hanging baskets.
Yes.
Kind of curious, and I don't know if this is a question for Jeff's group or whom, but we just want to understand how many that is, so we can kind of just understand when we're looking at allocating that money. So if I see a $40,000 request, then we know, okay, it's $40,000 for X planters, and here's where they are in the hanging baskets. So that'd be one question I have probably for Jeff's group. Number two is, I still have the same concern regarding, there's some public property there, which I absolutely want to make sure we're supporting, getting cleaned up. I don't want taxpayers subsidizing the costs for cleaning up others' private property. So even actually an example, I'm not sure, I'd be curious to look into, but for example, the one that was outside the parking lot next to Rock and Taco, I'm not even sure if that spot is public land or private land, but if it's private land, then it's that landlord that owns multiple properties, which has great properties that we all love, and certainly makes a good amount of money off those. And I'd want to make sure we're not subsidizing any landlords for not taking care of their property, because we do have code enforcement and rules like that. So I just wanted to remind of that. And can we go back to the picture of Heart of Roswell Park?
Well, Mike, let me just address that. So I think Randy and Sharon's not in here either.
She's not,
So we've been addressing that this year, right? And I think much more aggressively. I know, Renee, you touched on that or not, but there's been a much stricter, aggressive movement by the city in saying, hey, you got to keep your private business clean, both in the front and the back. And you're going to see, I think, more successful initiatives on the East Alley side, particularly behind. That's going to become a greater focus for Sharon, I think, pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think we need to be in coordination on that, because we need to make sure that any budget requests and any plans for the volunteers, et cetera, is not focused on places that are going to be enforced because they're not doing what they're required to do. But I appreciate that. And then lastly, so as you can see with the grass right here, great place for families and kids to play. They love to sit there, roll around, all that. And ironically, we just received an email during this meeting, the mayor and council, mentioning many families using this small park because it's one of the few open green spaces near Cannon Street, and they're basically asking for us to make some updates to make it safer when you got Highway 9 right there, which I think is probably a shared goal among this council as well as you and other volunteers. So I just wanted to mention the great timing for that, as well as this email that just came in probably about an hour ago.
One of the plans for Heart of Roswell Parks closes off that little place, where Alpharetta Highway closes that off, so they've looked at that. As far as the hanging baskets and planters, we have 48 hanging baskets and we have 29 planters. About 8 of those planters are in Heart of Roswell Park, and the city waters those, and they also pay for those, they pay for the 2 huge ones right outside the thing. As far as the Rock and Taco side, where you're concerned about it not being city property, I don't know if it's in the right of way or not, but I know that last year the city gave us no money for landscape maintenance, and so that money, the money we spent to put mulch and to keep that was money that we raised personally, so the city didn't come out of pocket anything. But we're asking again this year, we're coming back at you, asking you again for it.
That's great. First of all, I'm amazed that you know the exact number of planters off the top of your head. That's very helpful. I'll probably need staff to write it down. True. I'll need staff to write that down so I can be remembering that. And yeah, the Rock and Taco example, that's really just an illustration, because I think you and your volunteers are so focused on just wanting to really clean up the area, and which is so awesome. And then it's just, I want to make sure that we're not paying for landlords that aren't taking care of their properties.
Yeah.
And we do have enforcement opportunities to make sure that everybody takes accountability for the property that they own.
One thing I wanted to mention to you about the challenges, East Alley, I don't like to really come to you with a problem unless I could have some kind of solution to the problem. And so last week and this week, we have approached some of the businesses in East Alley, and we have 4 businesses who they have allowed us to come back and clean up their place, and they will pay us a maintenance fee, an initial cleanup, and then a monthly maintenance fee. We have 3 buildings that have said they'll do it, and we're working on the others. So if I can get that done and they can pay for it, then it'll look better next month.
Renee, that's awesome. I don't want to speak for Sharon and Jeff and the rest of my colleagues and Mr. Knighton, but I think we invite you to bring us those problems, even if you don't have a solution. We want to know so we can help be part of the solution-making process. And we may have something going on in a different area or working on something that may be a helpful part of the process.
Please call me. You know.
So Sharon, I think Sharon is able and ready, Jeff's able and ready, like they're saying, hey, call us. If you got a problem, call us.
And Sharon, there was the feedback we've heard from others that there's not enough trash receptacles, nor, we'll call out as well, nor their recycling receptacles. That was called out earlier.
Does council have any other questions, comments for Renee? Renee, everybody appreciates your great work. Thank you. Thank you for what you do for your city and for our city, for this city. And we're glad we get to see you at least once a year. We'd like to see you more often. And thank you so much. God bless, and thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we have 6 minutes to a city council meeting, so I'm going to say the workshop's over. Thanks very much.